It only takes 5 seconds for everything you thought you knew about your life to disappear. 5 seconds to rewrite your future. 5 seconds to transform a simple expectation into something overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, heart steady, mind calm, believing you are about to hear something ordinary, and then suddenly, nothing is ordinary anymore. In a single moment, your world doubles in size, your fears multiply, and your dreams stretch far beyond what you ever imagined possible. This is not just a story about pregnancy. This is a story about shock, transformation, and the emotional storm that comes when life decides to surprise you in the most powerful way. Because sometimes, the biggest miracles arrive without warning, and they change everything. Twin pregnancy is often seen as something magical, rare, and deeply special, but behind the smiles and excitement lies a powerful emotional journey that few truly understand. Today, you're going to experience what it feels like when a simple moment turns into something life-altering, when joy and fear collide, and when the heart struggles to keep up with the speed of change. This story dives deep into that exact moment, the second everything shifted forever. If you've ever wondered what it truly feels like to face the unexpected, or if you're navigating your own journey of transformation, this video is for you. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, and stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear might change the way you see life's surprises forever. The day began like any other, wrapped in a quiet sense of anticipation that felt both ordinary and slightly electric, as if something important was waiting just beneath the surface, ready to reveal itself at any moment. There was no dramatic build-up, no overwhelming sense that life was about to shift in a way that could never be undone. Only a calm expectation that this appointment would confirm what was already believed to be true. The room felt small yet safe, filled with the low hum of medical equipment and the subtle rhythm of a heartbeat that seemed to echo louder than usual. Thoughts wandered gently between excitement and curiosity, imagining a future that had already begun to take shape in the mind, one that felt predictable and comforting. Everything seemed aligned with that vision, every expectation grounded in a singular path forward, until the moment arrived when reality decided to unfold in a way no one had prepared for. It happened quickly, so quickly that time itself seemed to hesitate for a fraction of a second, as if even the universe needed a moment to catch its breath before delivering something so unexpected. The words were simple, almost casual in their delivery, yet they carried a weight that shattered every assumption in an instant. There was no warning, no gradual lead-up, just a sudden shift from certainty into something vast and unknown. In those 5 seconds, the mind struggled to process what had just been said, replaying it over and over again, trying to fit it into a reality that no longer existed in the same way. The heartbeat grew louder, faster, almost overwhelming, as emotions surged without direction, colliding into each other in a storm of disbelief, wonder, fear, and something else that couldn't yet be named. It was the moment when everything stopped, and everything began again at the same time. At first, there was silence, not the absence of sound, but the kind of silence that exists when the mind is trying to rebuild itself from the inside out. It was as if every thought had been scattered into pieces, each one struggling to reconnect with the others in a way that made sense. The idea of twins hovered in the air, unreal and almost impossible to grasp, like a concept that belonged to someone else's story, not this one. There had been no preparation for this, no mental rehearsal of what it might mean to carry not one life but two, to suddenly realize that everything, every plan, every expectation, every fear, had just doubled in complexity and intensity. The silence stretched longer than it should have, filled with an invisible weight that pressed gently yet persistently against the chest, making it harder to breathe, harder to think, harder to fully accept what had just become real. Then came the flood of emotion, rising without permission and without order, overwhelming in its intensity and impossible to contain. Joy appeared first, bright and undeniable, a powerful reminder that this was something extraordinary, something rare and deeply meaningful. But almost immediately it was followed by fear, creeping in quietly yet firmly, bringing with it questions that had no immediate answers. How would this work? How would everything be managed? How would the future look now that it had changed so dramatically in a matter of seconds? The mind moved rapidly between extremes, unable to settle, caught between the beauty of what had been revealed and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. It was a moment of emotional contradiction, where happiness and anxiety coexisted in a fragile balance, each one amplifying the other in ways that made everything feel more intense, more real, and more overwhelming than ever before. As the reality began to settle, even slightly, the weight of responsibility started to make itself known, not as something negative, but as something immense and undeniable. The idea of nurturing one life already carried a profound sense of purpose, but now there were two hearts beating, two futures unfolding simultaneously, two lives that would depend entirely on the strength, care, and resilience that had yet to fully emerge. It was no longer just about adapting to change, but about expanding in ways that felt almost impossible to measure. The future, once clear and singular, now stretched outward into something far more complex, filled with unknown challenges and unexpected beauty. The mind tried to catch up, to create new plans, new expectations, new possibilities, but everything felt unfinished, as if the story had suddenly doubled in length without giving any extra time to understand it. Time seemed to move differently after that moment, as if each second carried more weight, more meaning, more awareness than before. The simplest thoughts became layered with deeper questions, and every small decision felt connected to something much larger than it had been just hours earlier. There was a constant awareness of duality, of everything existing in pairs, of life no longer moving along a single path but branching into two directions at once. Even the imagination began to shift, no longer picturing one future, but two intertwined journeys growing side by side. It was both beautiful and overwhelming, inspiring and intimidating, a reminder that life rarely unfolds in the ways we expect, yet often delivers something far greater than what we had originally envisioned. The challenge was not just to accept this new reality, but to embrace it fully, to allow it to reshape everything without resistance. The emotional landscape continued to evolve, shifting gradually from shock into something deeper and more reflective, as the mind began to process not just what had happened, but what it meant on a larger scale. This was no longer just a surprising moment, but a turning point, a moment that would define everything that came after it. There was a growing awareness that life had expanded in a way that demanded growth in return, that this new reality required a new version of strength, patience, and understanding. The fear didn't disappear, but it began to transform, becoming less paralyzing and more motivating, pushing forward rather than holding back. The joy, too, became more grounded, less explosive and more steady, settling into something that felt real and sustainable. It was the beginning of a new emotional balance, one that would continue to shift and grow with time. Gradually, acceptance began to take root, not as a sudden realization, but as a quiet and steady process that unfolded over time. It was found in small moments, in brief reflections, in the gentle acknowledgement that this was now reality, and that reality was not something to resist, but something to grow into. The idea of twins no longer felt distant or abstract, but tangible and present, something that could be imagined more clearly, something that could be prepared for, even if not fully understood. There was a sense of surrender in this acceptance, a willingness to let go of what had been expected and to step into what was now unfolding. It was not easy, but it was necessary, and with each passing moment it became just a little bit more natural, a little more familiar, a little less overwhelming. Hope began to expand alongside that acceptance, filling in the spaces where fear had once dominated, bringing with it a sense of possibility that felt both exciting and deeply reassuring. The future, though still uncertain, no longer felt intimidating in the same way, but rather open and full of potential. There was a growing belief that even though this path had not been chosen, it had been given for a reason, and that within it existed opportunities for growth, connection, and love that could not be found anywhere else. The idea of raising two lives simultaneously began to transform from a challenge into a privilege, something that, while difficult, would also be incredibly rewarding. It was a shift in perspective that changed everything, turning uncertainty into curiosity and fear into determination. The connection to the unseen lives growing within began to deepen, becoming more real with each passing thought, each passing moment of reflection. There was a sense of responsibility, yes, but also a profound sense of wonder, a realization that something extraordinary was happening, something that would shape not only their lives, but also the life of the one carrying them. It was no longer just about the external changes, but about an internal transformation, a redefinition of identity, purpose, and strength. The idea of becoming a parent had already begun to take root, but now it expanded into something even greater, something that required a new level of awareness, patience, and unconditional love. It was a journey that had only just begun, yet already felt vast and deeply meaningful. The physical awareness of the pregnancy also began to shift, becoming more pronounced, more significant, as the understanding of what was happening internally grew stronger. Every sensation carried more meaning, every change felt more important, as the body adapted to support not one, but two developing lives. It was a reminder of the incredible resilience and capability of the human body, of its ability to adjust, to expand, to nurture in ways that often go unnoticed. There was a growing respect for this process, a recognition that something truly remarkable was taking place, something that deserved patience, care, and attention. The experience became more than just emotional or mental, but deeply physical, grounding the reality of the situation in a way that could no longer be ignored. Support systems began to take on a new level of importance, as the realization set in that this journey would not be walked alone, and that strength often comes from connection rather than isolation. The idea of sharing this news, of expressing the mixture of emotions, became both comforting and challenging, as it required vulnerability and openness. There was a need to be understood, to be supported, to feel less alone in the experience of something so overwhelming. At the same time, there was a growing appreciation for the people who would be part of this journey, who would offer guidance, encouragement, and reassurance when it was needed most. It was a reminder that even in moments of deep personal transformation, connection remains one of the most powerful sources of strength. The vision of the future continued to evolve, becoming richer, more detailed, and more emotionally charged, as the mind began to imagine life not just in the abstract, but in tangible moments. There were images of two children growing side by side, of shared experiences, of challenges and triumphs that would be faced together. The idea of raising twins brought with it a sense of uniqueness, a recognition that this journey would be unlike any other, filled with moments that could not be replicated or fully understood by those who had not experienced it. It was both a responsibility and a gift, something that would require resilience, but would also provide a depth of connection and meaning that few other experiences could offer. The fears did not disappear entirely, but they began to lose their sharpness, becoming softer, more manageable, as confidence slowly started to build. There was an understanding that while not everything could be controlled or predicted, there was still the ability to adapt, to learn, and to grow into whatever challenges might arise. The unknown became less intimidating and more intriguing, something to be explored rather than avoided. It was a shift that brought a sense of empowerment, a realization that even in the face of uncertainty, there is always the potential for strength and resilience to emerge. It was not about having all the answers, but about trusting in the ability to find them along the way. Gratitude began to emerge as a quiet yet powerful presence, woven into the experience in a way that transformed how everything was perceived. What had initially felt overwhelming began to feel meaningful. What had seemed frightening began to feel purposeful. There was a growing awareness that this moment, this unexpected revelation, was not something to fear, but something to honor, something to embrace fully despite its challenges. It was a reminder that life's most powerful moments often arrive unannounced, and that within them lies the potential for profound growth and transformation. Gratitude did not erase the difficulty, but it gave it context, turning it into something valuable rather than something to resist. The journey forward remained uncertain, filled with questions that would only be answered with time, but there was a growing sense of readiness, a willingness to step into the unknown with courage and openness. It was not about being fully prepared, but about being willing to learn, to adapt, and to embrace whatever came next. The experience had already begun to reshape everything, to redefine what was possible, to expand the boundaries of what had once seemed manageable. It was the beginning of something new, something challenging, something deeply meaningful, and while the path ahead was not yet clear, There was a quiet confidence beginning to take root, a belief that whatever lay ahead could be faced with strength, resilience, and love. In the end, those 5 seconds did more than just deliver unexpected news. They transformed an entire way of seeing the world, turning certainty into possibility, fear into growth, and a single path into something beautifully complex. It was a moment that would never be forgotten, not because of its shock, but because of its power to change everything that followed. And in that change, in that expansion, there was something extraordinary waiting to unfold. Something that would continue to grow and evolve in ways that could not yet be fully understood, but could already be deeply felt. Life rarely asks for permission before it changes everything. Sometimes it simply arrives with a moment so powerful that it forces you to grow, to expand, and to become someone you never imagined you could be. Discovering a twin pregnancy in just 5 seconds is more than a surprise. It is a transformation. A shift that challenges the heart and awakens a deeper strength within. What begins as shock slowly becomes acceptance, then courage, and finally something even more powerful, love beyond measure. And maybe that is the real lesson hidden in moments like these, that the unexpected is not here to break us, but to reveal just how much we are capable of holding, embracing, and becoming.